right, let's talk about Rock Cobbler 2024 and my adventure therein. So, Rock Cobbler is in Bakersfield, California. It's a gravel race that happens every year in February. And this year it started on my birthday, February 10th. So, I turned 45 the morning of the Cobbler, and very shortly thereafter got started on one hell of a bike ride. So you can see the course here. Once I imported it from Ride with GPS into Strava, we got 91 miles and 10,000 feet of elevation. And Strava estimated about a 7-hour finishing time for me, which was close to what I estimated. I thought about 7.5 to 8 hours was what it was going to take me. It was a little bit muddy conditions, and I thought that would slow me down a little bit. And it's a long ride, so. That was my plan. Try to finish in 7.5, 8 hours at the longest. One thing to call out here is a bunch of these little spikes there in that elevation profile. I know from the Cobbler a few years ago, actually did the Pebbler a few years ago, that there was a bunch of very steep climbs along the route. But it turned out that today, in this edition, there were a lot more 18+% kickers, and those were very hard, as you'll see in the future. One other thing I did recently is I started using Eat My Ride to help plan my nutrition. And you can see my nutrition plan here. I was using some Scratch Labs energy mix that's like 100 grams of carbs per bottle, along with some real food along the way. And this was actually, for the time plan, this was actually a really great mix of nutrition, and I thought overall I didn't feel like that was my limiting factor. I think I was well stocked with carbs along the way. I did have a banana and a couple of orange slices at some rest areas to supplement this, but overall that went really well, I think. And I'll definitely continue to use Eat My Ride in the future to help make sure I have my nutrition dialed in for especially for longer races. All right, let's get started with the race. I was in the second wave, which left at about 8:10 in the morning, if I recall correctly. It was about 49 degrees when we got started. I was lucky enough to find a fire pit near the start line, and it actually made me a little overconfident because I took off some layers before we got started. And once I got up to the starting position for a few minutes, I realized how chilly it actually was. But once we got going, that wasn't too much of a problem.
Wave 2, have a great time. Helmet side up all day today.
All right, so this is leaving the starting area, going past the stage, where you can pick up all our registration information. We're going to come around and we'll get to see Liz wave me on here in just a second to get going on this epic adventure. Oh, there she is. Hi, Liz. All right, we're going to cut over to her video of this for the moment and see me roll out here to the rest of the group. One thing that was different this year than was when I rode the Pebbler 2 years ago is that after this neutralized rollout section in the Pebbler, we basically stuck together as one compact peloton all the way until the first gravel climb. Oh, hello. And then it got scattered once you hit the gravel. Today, or on this event, the group just blew up as soon as we got to the trails. I'm not sure what the difference is there or why that happened, but that is what it's like. And ended up, well, we'll see in a minute. We'll see what happens as we get to the trails. So here we are, zooming down the trails. I found this group somewhere in the middle. I think the fast people had gone off the front already, and we started kind of pace lining around. This initial section was, I don't know, a pretty decent number of miles long on pavement, which was fun. We had a good group of people going in a pace line. Probably overcooked a few hills and things just to stay in the group. But it was early and it felt exciting to be out there, so no big deal. Okay, so here's where we come to the first gravel section, which starts on a little hill and then hits a big kicker. I think one thing in this video that I didn't do is actually film the uphills very much. They were slow and steep, and there was a lot of walking. So most of this video is actually a lot of downhills, and it's going to make it look a lot easier than it actually was. In fact, my wife said, "Hey, this looks kind of easy," and I was like, "Oh, that is not the case at all." One of the big problems was that a lot of the trail was very tacky. It had been raining for weeks beforehand. I think overall the trails were in really great condition, given that. Here's that first steep hill, and you can see mud flying by the camera here. Overall, the trails were in great condition, except that, man, they were sticky. It would take, an extra 50 watts to continue going at your normal speed, and going at your normal speed was really difficult as soon as you hit these tacky sections. So that, combined with a ton of uphills that were 18+% steep, was really difficult. This is really early in the beginning. I'm already kind of not with a group of people. I was kind of out on my own between groups, which the first half of the race was in and out of groups like this. I don't have my power data and speed on here, but my average speed for the overall ride is something like 9.5 miles per hour, which is the slowest I think I've ever gone in any event, any bike ride ever. And a lot of that was due to mud and steep hills that required walking. So let's watch some of these downhills here and pretend that it was all nice and easy downhill the whole way, and we'll talk a little bit more when we get to some of the steeper hills. I will say that these early winter races in California are really beautiful. With the hills are a lot greener than they are later in the year. The cool weather felt great as we were working really hard up these hills, and the downhills didn't feel too bad on the temperature side either. So yeah, there's a lot of beautiful rolling hills outside of Bakersfield, and overall, just Bakersfield is a great place for off-road gravel style riding. I will say a lot of this route was on private ranch land, so you can't actually follow this exact route most of the way, but there still are a lot of public lands in the Bakersfield area where you can get a lot of good gravel riding in. So if you're down in that area, check it out. It's pretty fun. So yeah, there's definitely a bunch of different styles of bikes out here. A lot of people on mountain bikes with some huge rear cassettes, and a lot of people on various style gravel bikes with some with smaller cassettes like mine, which is a 33, 36 at the biggest or the smallest gearing, and a lot of people with like 30 or 52s in the back, and all kinds of people with like myself with big backpacks, people without any accoutrements to go with them, and this was it's really interesting to see people how they prepare for an event like this, and I think the mountain bikers definitely lose a little bit in the faster positions, but man, on the day like this with the mud and the steepness, I kind of feel like they had they knew something that a lot of us could have taken advantage of, which is mostly some really small or big gearing for these hills. So this is a long downhill, I think coming towards the first rest area, and a couple of people that were racing for the Pebbler, in the front of the Pebbler, were passing me at this point, and they started a couple legs behind me, which shows how far back I had been, even though felt like I was working pretty darn hard. Oh yeah, hike a bike. So I mentioned walking, and this is probably a 20% climb. I think 85% or more of the people had to push their bike up hills, and this was, this specific one there's 3 of these right in a row, and you come down the other side of them and be really fast, and you go usually straight back into another 18 to 20% climb where you had to walk, and even people who had the 52 chain rings in the back were walking up those hills. Not everybody. A couple of people powered through them. A couple of people powered through one and then realized there were more and then had to walk the other one. So overall, I think I spent about 2.5 hours of coasting, quote unquote coasting, according to my Wahoo on this ride, and I think a good hour and a half of that was probably walking my bike up hills. I didn't video record most of those because it's not super interesting, but suffice it to say that with the mud and not, almost just barely over 1-to-1 gearing ratio, I had a lot of trouble on some of these, repeated 18+% muddy hills, and so did a lot of other people along the way. But yeah, again, the video, it's mostly downhills and flats and looks not so bad, but I left out the hard parts because that seemed, again, less interesting. But let me tell you, it's pretty hard to hike a bike repeatedly up 20% grades, even if they're relatively short of just a couple hundred meters or so in distance. This is a nice, fast, flowy downhill, and but not signed super well, because right there you really have to turn. I had to slam on the brakes and lose all momentum to make that turn. It would have been nice to have some of those arrows a little bit farther up the hill, but overall it's fine. But the course was well marked almost all the way. I think that might have been one of the few places where it would have been nice. Oh, and here's another 12% kicker, 18% kicker, real quick. At least we had some speed from the downhill to get over that. There's another example of a easy climb here. Not too bad. I think only in the mid to upper teens here. I think, this is another one we're going to have to get up and walk, because that is just so steep. Look at all those other people walking too. Didn't feel so bad most of the time because the number of people were walking was high, but it was a little demoralizing for this to happen over and over again. after a lot of hills, we got to this flat part that I kind of looked at on the map and thought, hey, this is a great time for some recovery, etc. But when we got down here, of course, it was just this total mud fest. What was a relatively flat, should have been nice and easy, was actually really difficult, and I was pushing a lot of watts just to keep moving through this muddy and soft, grassy area along the way. It's lasted for a while before we popped out onto a road. And then, yeah, we have some more of these hills. So this is another example of where you have 3 or 4 hills in a row where you could bomb down really nicely, nice fun descent, and then immediately slam straight into 18% wall that just couldn't pedal up unless you had a huge cassette chainring in the back. And like this gentleman to my right, who probably had a 48 or 52 on the back. So yeah, that was a repeated thing throughout the day, especially the first half of the race, where there's a lot of very short and steep versions of that. Later in the race, there became less short and steep and more a very, very long climb, which you probably, if you remember the profile, you could see. But here's a nice flowy, high-speed section that was actually dry mostly. Felt great to actually be able to spin the wheels and go more than 10 miles per hour. For a while. Unfortunately, it didn't last as long as you would hope for.
60 miles to go, and 4,000 feet of climbing. Oh, yikes!
Sag stop, rest stop. We've done 5,000 feet of climbing, 37 miles. It took me 4 hours and 10 minutes to do 37 miles. Every time you hit a tiny bit of mud, it takes 50 watts more to get through it. Even though it's not bad, it's not like super wet. It's just like a little wet, but it slows you way down. Pretty tired. Let's see what happens.
Sorry for the wind noise there. That was my little other camera, but the first four plus hours didn't go very far. It was really difficult. It was really nice to hit this pavement for a little while, even though it didn't last all that long in the end. So this section was a really pretty section. It was after the Pebbler and Cobbler split their separate ways, where a gentleman was saying more suffering to the left and less suffering to the right, and I chose the more suffering, which was definitely true. This isn't too steep of a climb, but nice little single track here on the edge of a little ravine. Lots of cow tracks along the hillside here. But yeah, this is a beautiful section. Lots of climbing. Did have to walk a few more times here as well. I also ran into some other people from Oakland here in this section up a little bit farther ahead, and we chatted and rode together for a little bit before they went ahead of me, and then later on I passed them again, but it was kind of fun to meet some people, quote unquote local to my house. The person in front of me here is someone local to Oakland as well. And yeah, we rode together for a little bit after some of these flowy hills, and had to hike a bike down a really crazy section, and chatted together about how our partners would appreciate it if we survived that section, which we did, and I'm pretty sure we both survived the entire race. Oh, at least I did, since I'm here talking to you now. So this section, is kind of downhill. It doesn't actually look like we're going that fast here, but let's move at a pretty good clip. I think there's a lot, this grass is pretty tall, and you might be able to see past a bunch of boulders. Well, boulders is probably a strong term. Big rocks on the side, and they were kind of hidden throughout this section. So it's kind of key to go under control so that you can see and not bottom out a pedal on a rock that was hiding behind some grass. But beautiful section of the ride. A little bit tenuous. If you went a foot and a half or 2 feet to the right, you would go down a pretty steep ravine, and that wouldn't have felt great, I'm sure. Beautiful section of the ride. I think you're going to come and take a sharp right turn here, and just an example of things that repeatedly happen in this course is you take this sharp right turn, you can pick up a little speed, and if you look ahead on there, you can see some tracks up on the hill, and that's like, I don't know, I didn't actually see, but it's probably a 25% little hill, and it's like, you hit this thing going relatively slow, maybe 10 or 15 miles per hour at the most, and there's just like zero chance a normal human could get up that thing. So that happened a handful of times on this course. A little bit farther later is the biggest climb of the day. It was something like 2.5 miles, 900 feet of climbing. It started out easy enough, like actually rideable, which was great, and then it got to over 8 or 10%, and at this point I just didn't have the muscles left to push up that hill. So did a lot of walking there, including a couple 25% sections as well, just for fun. After that, though, when I was walking up the hill, I was passing somebody and telling them I hope that there wasn't a big technical downhill after this, thinking more like, I can kind of relax and do a flowy downhill. Turns out it was a super long technical downhill, but once I got on it, I was pretty excited, because it's this little slot canyon here, down, I guess, is a little creek bed, but it was pretty dry, lots of rocks, so couldn't bomb it at full speed, but it was a really long downhill, and it was pretty fun. I did have to stop at one point and rest my wrists, because they, for a minute, because it was so long and bumpy, but probably one of the more enjoyable parts of the ride was this canyon. I was here pretty much alone. At the very top, someone passed me, but for most of it, I was just cruising by myself down this canyon, and was pretty enjoyable. This is coming up, at the end of this canyon, and then a couple miles at the end of this canyon was the third rest area. And when I got there, they were speculating that there was only 50 or so people still left on the course, which was a little bit demotivating. I got there like 3:15 or so, and I think that's right, 3:15, and the last sag stop was supposed to close, but you're supposed to get there before 4:30, and it was still 20 something miles away. And so I was like, I was like, okay, I have to go 20 miles in about an hour. Not too bad, not that bad normally if you're on the road, but this sticky mud and things was rough. And in fact, well, we'll get there in a second.
Sun's starting to go down. 64 miles, 8,200 feet of climbing. So hard. Can barely go zone 2 anymore.
So you can hear it in my voice there. This was after. This is definitely after the third sag stop. There was a good section of road after the third rest area that I was pretty excited about. I thought, hey, maybe we're going to get a bunch of road here and we can make up a bunch of time. That only lasted for a few miles, but I did pound out those miles really quickly, and we got to a bunch of sections of off-road that were relatively flat with a couple kickers. I think the biggest annoying part was that there was a 100-meter sand pit that I had to walk through along the way.
I went ahead and pulled the chute at mile 68. I just couldn't see myself doing another hour and 20 minutes. I'm hurting, back hurts, neck hurts, legs cramping, heart rate won't go over 130. Oh well, it's still the biggest climbing day. Well, I mean, I did a lot of walking, but still had to go up the hill. Oh well. I'm not sure I can say that was fun. It was certainly a challenge. And we're just going to roll into the finish here along this way path.
So you could hear it in my voice there at the end. I was a little bit frustrated, definitely very tired, definitely painful in various places. I felt like my legs were going to cramp up at any moment. But overall, I got to this turn where if I went right, I would go to the fourth rest area and the final 22 miles, including what I knew was an actual intentional hike and bike section over there. And if I turned left, it was like 9 miles back to the start finish line. And I just couldn't see myself finishing in any, doing another 2 hours and finishing in the dark. I didn't have any lights or anything. I didn't think it was going to take that long. So I wasn't prepared for the end times there of the race, unfortunately. But yeah, I pulled the chute, did 77 miles, 8,000 feet of climbing, biggest climbing day ever. One of my longer road ride, maybe my sixth or seventh longest road ride, 10th longest road ride, something like that ever. I went into the ride here expecting or trying to have an average power of around 185 watts across the day and normalized. I think I was something like 187, so that was pretty well on target. I think my fueling was mostly on target. What I did not have was, or what I underestimated was the amount of mud and how slow that would be. And also, frankly, I just had the wrong gearing. I think, all the emails before the ride said bring a big cassette, and I'd done this before on a 34 Roubaix, like a road bike with 32 millimeter tires and the Pebbler, and I had it walked a couple times, but I think those were like more scheduled walking. I don't remember getting off the bike much on the normal course. But this with my gravel bike, 38 millimeter tires and a 33-36 gear ratio, there's just no chance to walk up a lot of these hills. So decent. I feel okay about the end result. I really would have want to finish. When I was at the car afterwards, I was thinking that there's no chance that I was going to do this again. But a couple weeks out from it, looking back, like it was a hard day. But I really, you gotta want to finish things, right? So like I think I'm gonna have to go back and try to do it. And I think the the two changes I would make is probably bring lights just in case I'm out there too long. And the other one is, yeah, definitely need a different chain ring uh, to get through the day in case there's that many steep hills. Yeah, that was it. That was 2024 Rock Cobbler. DNF'd was hard. Enjoyed it, especially looking back on it. Ready to go back next year or maybe the year after with a little bit better bike and bike setup and crush this thing. All right, thanks for listening. Bye.